Good morning and welcome to another Craft Roulette process video. This is for Craft Roulette 156, and the parameters this week were a mini drop down, which was interpreted differently by almost everybody. We are going to use the same interpretation as the Craft Roulette guest and make a shaker card basically. And then the next parameter for colors were inspired by pattern paper. And I'm taking the inspiration from this pattern paper that you may remember from last week. And I also found these tulips that are out of this MFT pad. The neat thing is, if I can find it, like these actually come with little lines around them that I don't know if you can see that quite well on camera, maybe not. Anyway, there's a thin gray line, so they're like set up to be scanned and cutted out pretty easily. And to me, these sort of these two color palettes are almost identical. And then I went into my stash and pulled out this Bring on Spring kit from Queen and Company that I've had for a while. We are going to be using this floral egg, but I die cut it out of white cardstock so we can color it basically. Because you have all these little flowers and then some leaves and vines and stuff, and I thought that would be fun to color. And then I cut a little strip off of this to make this, because this is an 1.5 inch piece. I thought we could use this sort of along the top. It's reading as white kind of on camera, but this is actually pale blue, and we're going to add some more ink to that to make it a little more obvious that it's pale blue. And then I have my inch piece at the bottom. Then I cut a coordinating piece to do a sentiment on. I'm not sure if I'm going to use any of this exactly. I'm thinking a sentiment would be nice, but we'll see. The kit actually came with a bunch, and there's a really nice one that says Bright Spring Wishes that I thought would be pretty neat and fairly coordinating. And whatever blue we bring in, which I'm kind of leaning towards, I'll change my mind and say to this Oh Boy, which is sort of a springier blue. This anything but the dress is more of like a true blue, I would say. It's not quite as dark as like a navy or something like, this guy, but I'm going to keep it more in a spring color palette. And then we'll pull some markers that match. One thing I want to mention about these kits is I like them a lot. They come with most of what you need to make a shaker card. They don't come with coordinating dies, but they're sort of an add-on if you want them. I really like them because you can build the whole shaker element and then sort of decide how you want it to look before you glue it down. It does come with foam. It does come with the sort of top dies, and you can see that here. And I just cut this out of Neenah Solar White, the 110 pound. So I actually use these top dies less as shaker elements, but more as like, I don't know, just sort of die cut elements on cards, right? Because you could just sort of adhere this and not make it a shaker, and it would be quite a pretty card as well. So there's that. Don't know if we have anything else to say before we get started. I was tempted to pull out my punch to make pretty edges on the sentiment strip, but after I kind of like keeping this whole thing square because we haven't done like a square card in a while. So all we really need to do is stamp this and then, adhere it down. I didn't talk about the parameters. Well, I talked about one and then diverted. The color, well, we talked about the mini drop down in the color. So the element this week is bouquet, which we have tulip bouquets. And I really like how these came out of my new assistant, the Scan and Cut. The back on this is actually kind of nice too. It's sort of it's a stripe pattern, but it's a little more artistic-y. I mean, it's like a brushstroke stripe as opposed to like a pure one. And then let me grab this and say, bouquet, what is, oh, and 3 layers is the last element, but there's a lot of 3 layers in cards, so I mean, that's almost, I guess I feel like that's sort of the easiest element, because almost all my cards have 3 layers. And if you didn't have 3 layers on your card, if you said just did like if you're doing more of a watercolor card or something like that where you're not even matting it, you can always just mat a white panel inside of your card and then have that as well. But I think we are good to go. I am really beating up this blending brush, which is good. I mean, like, it's good to use them. And I kind of just want to, like, edge this a little bit. I don't need it to be, like, super crazy, because obviously there's going to be a lot going on this card anyway. But I do like just touching the edge a bit so that your focus is drawn into the middle of the card. Not that that will be hard if there's a shaker element. Oh, and I didn't talk about what we might put inside the shaker, since the shaker is just a window until, whoops, that's not ideal. Anyway, that'll be fine. And luckily, I had a floral sort of chunky glitter mix from Michaels I think I'll use, which also kind of goes well with the color palette, a lot of yellows and purples and all that. So I think we're done here. This is pretty thin cardstock. This is 66 pound. So, like if you were gluing the shaker to this, you'd really want to make sure this is adhered well to your card base. But what I'm going to do is just grab a white card base quick. And I think we're just going to be good to go. Or maybe I'll try a colored one. So I do have some very springy colored card bases I don't think I've done much with yet. Let's see. Well, we have this one that's pink and purple that would be pretty vibrant against the blue. And still, like, that's the same color as the tulip. So I like that. I guess the one thing we kind of have to be a little careful of is, I don't know, they're all kind of in the same color palette, so I think this won't look like crazy busy, but we'll see. I mean, it'll be kind of a busy card, but what I want to do first is I'm just gonna. Ooh, there's a little flower there for some reason. I just want to tack down this guy, and then we can get this out of the way and start working on the shaker element, and then figure out what we want to do with the rest of this. These are the AdTech permanent glue runners, which I'm a fan of. I like them for sort of these kind of things where you're just doing sort of more of a quick project, or any time that, like, going in with your ATG gun seems like it's just going to be a little bit tricky. There we go. I'm just going to set this aside to let the dry adhesive kick in. And I think the next thing we're going to do is color this guy. And I want a green. I think this yellow green will be good. Let me see if I have. I'm sure I have scrap paper somewhere that I could test markers out on. That's not quite white. Here, oh, those are envelope. Here we go. So this is my bird remnant from a previous thing. Oh, and one tip I heard from a friend of mine is, so with these Oohoo-Hoos, the brush end has no line. Either the chisel or the mini detail end does have this little gray line. So that's how you tell what end you're on. But so that's pretty good. This is green 2. Maybe a yellow green might be a little more. Yeah, I like that. So yellow green. Let's see if we can't match. Yellow would make sense. This is the, like, yeah, that yellow. That's yellow 2. This is yellow 3. Yeah, I think yellow 3 is a good yellow. Then we need some kind of a purple. This is a very deep purple, which might be okay. Let me see if I have more of a purple 2 would be a little lighter. Curious if I have like a true purple 3. Let's grab purple 3. See how that looks. Oh, yes. I think these are the 3 colors we'll basically use. So this one, and this one. I should actually stop being lazy and like actually swatch most of the stuff that I'm using so that it's easier to tell. What I'm actually going to do so I don't get ink everywhere is use the bag. You can also use any acetate sheet if you want to do a similar technique, but this just makes it easy to do some coloring. So I'm going to let's just this is sort of like messy watercolors where you just actually this actually would work just as well with the brush end. Where you're just basically trying to get color on the die cut and sort of let the die cut do the rest. And we're not really doing, we're not doing a ton of like complicated blending or anything. I will hold this down though. That's the one thing I guess I would be a little careful of. Again, I grabbed the wrong end. Like this is a fairly delicate die cut. So I'm doing more of a dabbing as opposed to a brushing. Because really, again, we're just wanting to get some color on here. And if you prefer, you don't necessarily need to do color here. You could just let the confetti or whatever you put inside your shaker sort of bring the color, or if you prefer. You could also go over this again a little bit. And of course, you could do more blending and stuff. I think we're good. I think we'll do purple on this guy. This is sort of a flower bit, a half flower, if you will. And then I'm just going to go in and do a little green. I guess that could have been a flower too, but there we go. Just bring that in. And I have been really liking alcohol ink coloring lately. And I got some new markers I'm going to be unboxing probably by the time you see this. Although I am really liking this particular Uhuhu series, so I don't know. I'm kind of, even though I got new markers, I'm kind of debating if I want to complete this series out because having the detail brush has been really helpful in a lot of cases. So there we go with that. And then comes sort of the cool part about these kits, which is that they come with these foam inserts as well as pre-cut acetate sheets, so it makes it really easy to make shaker cards, if that's the thing you enjoy doing. And I want to say it comes with enough stuff to make 3 of each card, so so we have the inside, which we could use as a mounting thing later, but the magic part is this, which just get out of the way. And it's really easy because this is double-sided and pre-adhesived, and then you just take it off and you line it up. This is why I like having these base layers, because you can just sort of, line this up and then press it down, and then basically you have this whole layer will move around while you're putting the rest of this together. And I'm going to grab my, well, first I'm going to find the sheet, the acetate sheet. That matches, which should be fairly easy because, basically these are big eggs. And, I mean, in this particular case, like cutting one of these sheets yourself would be no big deal. Some of the, that is the wrong one. Depending on the complexity of the design, some of these would be more or less a pain to do yourself. So this is definitely an egg. There we go. Yeah, this is the right egg. So basically we just want to fill this up with whatever we want and then put that on. Then we can take the adhesive off and then put the lid, the top on this. And then we'll have to use strong glue for this, obviously. But that is a thing that we have. Because we've got some white mono here, which, I don't know, the non-aqua, if you will. So we just dump some in. And the tendency is to kind of overfill these. Like, you don't need a ton, but, whoop. And that's kind of what happens. And I actually picked these up to use them more as individual embellishments, because as you can see, they're pretty holographic. This is a reason that, like, depending on you can either, with a back on this, it's a lot easier to move around while you spill sequins everywhere. I don't know if these are really sequins, whatever you want to call these. Very chunky flowers. I guess the one thing about these pre-cut acetate sheets are they're really easy to lose on your desk if you're not careful. So, yeah, I've done that a few times. Anyway, I think this is about the level of glitter I want. So I'm going to grab my pokey tool and see if I can't get this top release sheet off. There we go. This one is actually designed, this is nylon on this end, so this one's actually sharp. So just FYI. A lot of them are not, which makes them, in my opinion, a lot safer. And then we just push this down. What we can do is come in with our scissors and sort of trim this. But, now we have a shaker element with flowers that drop down. And I'll just come in with these are Tim Holtz serrated scissors, but basically what I'm just trying to do is keep the scissors aligned with the edge of the foam, and then just cut off a little bit of the extra. Get rid of our release paper, and then we just have to glue this on top. And even if you kind of mess up the shaker to a certain degree, since the piece you're gluing on top is usually slightly larger, it's not going to be a huge deal. But I am going to go and grab my card base again to sort of, I'm probably going to figure out what I want to do with the rest of the card and then go from there. So I'm thinking I want the egg kind of, well, I don't know if we need it straight up and down, because sort of the flowers would kind of make it, I think this kind of works too. And then we just have to cross our tulips like that. I think will work nicely. Then we'll have our sentiment there, and then this little one up top. Just make sure whatever direction we pick for the the chevrons, it's the same. So I'm actually going to move this for now, and I'll get our two. Well, probably want to get these on. I'm going to get this guy on first, and then go from there. Um, so for the paper, I'm just going to use the Lineco neutral pH glue because I think that it's really good on paper to paper, and we don't need a lot of glue here. Um, I'll probably use the Lineco to glue the back onto this. Do we have? I guess the question is if we have a strong preference on. Get these a little out of the way. Kind of like it like that. So that would mean the edge would be up, right? Yeah. Yeah, I guess it would come here. So I guess rotating this and then rotating this, then this is the same as this pattern. That probably makes more sense. So I'm just gonna even that off and put it down. Then this will go here. Our egg will be a little tilty. Kind of like that. The next thing we need to sort of figure out is one of these we'd probably want parallel. And this Lineco glue will work great for this. The only thing I really need to use strong glue for is gluing the that top piece onto the shaker because we're gluing onto acetate, which is always a little bit, I won't say it's tricky, but it tends to require a lot more drying time because it doesn't dry through the bottom of the acetate. And I seem to have lost a squeegee on my desk somewhere. But if you have well, we can use one of these because we have a lot of silicone squeegees hanging around. But if you have a squeegeeing, or a pokey tool to break into a new squeegee, a squeegee will help kind of distribute the liquid glue. So you're going to wind up with better adhesion long term. And I like these silicone ones because you can't like overly squish things with them. Probably cross them because most of this will get covered up. I guess the other option is something a little more, I kind of like them crossed in the middle. I think that's a good look. While we pursue doing a card that's sort of, I don't know, it's interesting. I don't generally do complicated cards, so this is, or at least I kind of consider this a complicated card. And then we'll put this in the center. Oops. Since we're going over a layer of paper, this is a good time when we can just hold it down. And I will glue down the back of this guy. You could also use strong glue for this, but since we're going paper to paper, I don't think it's really needed. So I'm just going to put some Lineco on there and put this down here. Trying to press carefully because it's a little tricky, but I'm going to let this dry while we work on a sentiment here quick. And then, actually, we can also glue down this piece while we're in the midst of gluing things. Just want to basically, there we go. Then they will glue that over sort of the bottom of the flowers. And this stuff adheres pretty quickly, but it does take a little extra time to dry. But let us grab our MISTI and put a sentiment on the sentiment strip. I'm still really liking the idea of Bright Spring Wishes, so let's do that. We sort of move this. Bright Spring Wishes would go about here. Bring my magnet back a little bit. I mean, the only good part about this is if you do it upside down, I don't think anybody would notice. And I am going to go in. I'm going to use the same blue that I used before. I like black sentiments a lot, but I think in keeping sort of with this card, having more of a light blue sentiment makes sense, at least to me. And this is sort of an example of a new stamp that didn't stamp perfectly great the first time. But you can just keep going over it, and like it will eventually work. It's just sort of the issue of new cling stamps don't really always stamp that nicely until they sort of get warmed up. And we're getting there. I think one more and we'll be good. That looks lovely. So, can let the ink on this dry and finish up the other part, but basically this is going to go here. In retrospect, I could have used some scrap to kind of pop this up a little bit so you didn't have this sort of hump in the middle, but again, I don't think it's going to be super obvious once the card's together. The only place that needs a little extra glue is sort of right in the middle there. It kind of was popping, unadhering. Everywhere else it seems pretty good, and just switch over. Well, I'll put this down, and then we can switch over to our other glue and finish off the card. I am really becoming a fan of both this glue and just these fine tip glue bottles generally because they really been making life a lot easier. Because I feel like, particularly the Lenco and particularly with paper, you get a really nice adhesion, which helps you out a lot. So, here we're going to be somewhat careful how much glue we use. Because I find with, yeah, here you can kind of see, but this mono, it's much easier to overdo the glue, which I did in a couple spots, so I'm going to wipe this off a little and just stick it on my arm for a moment. And then we want to center this down. Whoops. Going to allow that to dry for a while, but that's our Craft Roulette card. And I think it came out pretty cool. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'm not sure why, but it seems like my video has been a lot more lighter lately. So, I don't know. I probably should look into that for next time, but thanks for checking it out. I appreciate it.